Michael from Enviro Solution Center, and in today's video we're going to be taking you through how to use our garden planner. This planner is aimed to achieve three things. Number one, recording the details of the garden as it exists and doing a bit of financial forecasting for those of you that are interested in moving from subsistence to small-scale commercial. The second thing is that it identifies what are the specific jobs that need to be done in the garden. And then the third part is allocating specific time to do those things. The chickens are obviously very excited. Okay, so this book is divided into the first part, which is around record keeping for the garden. The second part is the activity planner and then the allocating of specific time in the garden. And the third part is around some detail around the different jobs. So all the activities that we've suggested, we also in the third part just describe them a little bit more. It's the beginnings of a manual. You will be tasked with doing a lot more research about these things on your own so that you know when to do them, how to do them, so you can get the best results in your garden. So let's go through it. Okay, so we have a title page, and then the first page just provides you all with a little introduction. It shares our copyleft policy, which encourages you to use this, adjust it however you want to. And then it tells you the contents, what you can expect on each page. This page helps you to keep everyone in the garden informed of how to contact each other. So it gives us the name of the garden, who's the garden leader, what's the garden period. So the garden period is how long are you planning and recording for in this booklet. We encourage people to work on an annual basis so that you're able to go through all 4 seasons. And then garden details. So the gardener details is about getting the names, the addresses, and the contact numbers of the people who are going to be working in the garden. It's very important that if you have outsiders working in your garden that they can reach each other, and it also you want to bring them in as one team. Okay, the next page. Here we're going to, there's space to describe what are the different aims of the garden. So a garden can achieve many things. You can use it for team building. You can use it for community cohesion. There's a difference between a home garden and a community garden. And all of these aims need to be articulated very clearly because these are the things that are going to help you when you're making decisions around what should be done and when these things should be done. So the aims are very much like the purposes and the goals or what it is you want to achieve. This is an interactive booklet where you have to write down what it is you want to achieve with your garden. What's the aim? What's the purpose? And this is what you will be doing on this page. The next page is our suggested sequence. So this is what we recommend as a suggested sequence for when you're setting up the garden. This assumes that this is the first time a gardener is starting, and each gardener will have their own sequence. Don't be afraid to try and do your own thing and work it out for yourself. But the sequence goes like this. Decide on what you like to eat, what you like to grow, what grows in your area, and what grows in the season. These are going to make sure that you're not trying to grow a plant that just doesn't grow in your area or it doesn't grow at that time of the year. So it does mean from all the options of plants that you can choose, you're looking at the specific time of the year, your specific soil type, your particular environment, and you're making the best choice about the first things that you're going to start with. The next part is planting seeds. Now this seems really strange because we haven't done any work in the garden yet we're planting seeds. And the reason why we do this is we prepare a small space and we plant our seeds so that while we are preparing our beds, our seedlings are growing. It takes approximately 6 weeks from the time you plant to go through germination, the forming of the first 2 leaves, and then the first 2 true leaves, where you can start identifying what each plant is. And while that 6 weeks period is unfolding, that's when you're designing and you're shaping your beds and you're getting the garden ready. It just means that while you're doing your work, nature is doing her work. once you've planted your seeds, you're going to number 3, design your garden. Yeah. So when you're doing designing, permaculture systems provide a lot of insight about what you need to think about when you're doing your design. So you're going to think about which direction the sun is. If you plant your garden in a shady area, you'll find your garden's really going to struggle. If you plant your garden where the wind is going to hit it, your plants are really going to struggle. So you're going to think about a whole range of things, specifically the natural elements, where the sun is, where the rain comes from, where the wind comes from, what the slope is like, and you're going to need to learn how to choose the best location in your design phase before you even start with the hard work of pick and spade, pulling out grass, pulling out weeds, and getting your garden ready. Once you've designed your garden, then you're going to start shaping your beds. Everyone has different ideas about how they want to shape their beds and how big they want their beds to be. Personally, I like to use a bed allocation of 1.5 meters and wide. It can be as long as I need it to be, but I like to make sure that it's 1.5 meters wide, which is the bed is going to be 1.2 meters and the pathway is going to be 30 centimeters. So I know when I'm designing my garden, I allocate 1.5 meters for the bed and the path. And this allows me to work from one side into half the bed and then from the other side of the bed into that half. So I don't have to stretch and step into the garden. I'm just really working in half the bed from each side. Then I mulch my entire garden. I make sure that I put a layer of dry grass all over the garden so that I preserve the moisture that's in the soil and I prevent too much weeds from growing. And then finally, I'm going to start planting. So the designing, the shaping, and the mulching, I've got a 6-week window if I'm starting a new garden, and then by that time, my seeds are ready, they've become seedlings, and I'm ready to plant them. Okay, then you will find that there is space in the planner to do a design of your garden. So I might, let's see if I've got a few old planners here, which have got designs of different gardens that we've lived in and worked on. Here's a great one. Yeah. So this garden was 1,300 square meters and we had a total of 27 beds. Yeah. So it allowed me to make a map of the garden. I was able to number the beds. So this edge was bed number 1, that was bed number 2, that was bed number 3, and this edge was bed number 4. Then I named them 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, all the way down to 25. And then I had beds 26 and 27 running at an angle. So this just allowed me to have a visual map that anyone can reference. If there's work that needs to be done in beds 10 to 15, everyone can check the map, see where it is, and then go into the garden and be able to work out exactly where that bed is. Okay, next up, we're going to start moving into developing what we call an asset inventory. Okay, so these are the garden assets. Yeah. So here we're going to make a list of the assets you already have in the garden, and we're going to try to work out a rand value for everything. So everything, we're going to see if we can put what we think it would be worth in rands. The reason why we do this is not to commercialize your garden, but rather so that you've got a reference of what your garden already has in terms of the financial investment. And often we think of, we've got an old spade, but we don't see its value. By giving it a rand value, the old spade, the fence, the tree that's been growing there for 10 years, all of these things are only valuable when we don't have them. But sometimes when we have them in the garden, we don't see their value. So on this page, you're going to be writing a list of the items. So this could be tools, it could be infrastructure, it could be plants. You're just going to write down all the stuff that you have. If you can, you're going to write down the date you received it. So we work with a lot of gardeners who receive things from government. They receive tools, hose pipe, water tanks, and then they haven't recorded when they received it, and the next column when they start using it. Because a lot of times people lose stuff gets stolen, and it becomes really important to keep track of these things, because this is how we learn from the garden. Coming from an organizational background, I've got a real big love for monitoring, evaluating, and learning. And that learning component is what allows us to get better and better as gardeners. So you're going to write down what you have, when you got it, when you started using it, and then you're going to give it a value. You're going to give it, if you think that your spade is worth 50 Rand or 100 Rand, you're going to write it into this column so that you're starting to match all the items to a Rand value, and you're going to find that you've actually got a lot of money already invested in your garden. Okay. The next page, we're going to start looking at income generating information. Yeah. So here we're specifically looking at the plants in your garden and what they are worth. We start with the vegetable name. So if you've got spinach in your garden, you're going to write here, you've got spinach. How many? We've got 50 plants. The date it was planted, it was on the 15th of September 2025. We expect to start harvesting from the 15th of December. So if we count, it's planted in September, we've got October, November, December. We've got 3 months before we start harvesting. We know that, it's going to be very small. So we know, okay, it's going to take December, January, February, March, April, May, possibly even into June, July, August of next year that we're going to harvest. We start planning this, which means you're going to need to start writing down some of the information that's in your head that you learn from other gardeners into this book as a reference. So once we know when we expect to harvest it, we're going to identify what are the different markets that we want to sell our vegetables to. So we're going to have for the home, so we know that's for us to eat. We want to sell some to the school kitchen, and we want to sell some at the community market. So these are the markets that we're going to be selling our spinach into. How much of these 50 plants do we want to sell into these markets? So we're going to sell 10, but we're going to distribute 10 bunches each week for home gardeners. That's for us and maybe our neighbors. For the school kitchen, we're going to do 50 bunches each week. And at the community market, we want to sell 100 bunches. We also have a price that we're planning for each of these bunches. So for our home gardens, it's free. For the school kitchen, it's 5 Rand a bunch. And for our community market, we're going to be selling it at 15 Rand a bunch. When we do some calculations and we say in the total income, 50 bunches times 5 Rand. So we've got 5 Rand times 50 bunches means we expect to earn about 250 Rand from our school kitchen. We've got 15 Rand a bunch, and we're going to do 100 bunches for the community market. We expect to earn 1,500 Rand from our spinach. So we're just starting to think about the value that our garden is going to create for us, the school, and the community, and then how much it's going to earn. Already we can see that these 50 bunches, these 50 spinach plants are starting to look like they could earn us up to 1,750 Rand. Over time, your ability to project these numbers will get better, and that's why we're gonna at the beginning, we do planning and forecasting or guessing what we're going to do. Then when we actually do it, we're going to record it so that at the end of the season, we're going to say, we guessed that we could sell 100 bunches in the community market at 15 Rand and it would make 1,500 Rand. But when we actually did it, we saw that actually we were only able to sell 75 bunches at the community market, and we had to sell it at 10 Rand, and that only came up to 750 Rand. Next year, when we do our process again, we're now a little bit better. Okay, let's go. So this page, it's doing the same thing, but less intensely. We've got the veg name, the number, when it was planted, the date we expect to start harvesting, the market, the amount, the price, the total income. Now we move on to section 2. Section 2 starts to look at the very specific tasks that you're going to have in the garden. Okay, so we've listed on the first page, we've listed just a few options of the kinds of jobs that you need to be thinking about so that you can plan for them and then later on allocate specific time to do them. These are the tasks. There's general tasks. So number 1, cleaning. Your garden should always be clean, just like your kitchen. There should never be plastic, there should never be dirt, there should never be animal feces. All of that stuff can't be in the garden. This is where you grow your food. This is where you make sure that it's very, very clean. So I really encourage you, allocate time. Every time you come into the garden, do some cleaning. The wind will bring chip packets and plastic and other people's rubbish. Make sure every time you come into the garden, even if you spend 20 minutes at the beginning of the day, just cleaning up. If you make that a habit, your garden will look beautiful. Cleaning, cleaning, cleaning. Another task is watering. So every gardener and every area will have a very particular way of planning the sequence of watering. For us, we like to put a lot of water in the beginning of the growing season. So it's usually we're planting in spring and autumn, and that's when we put the most water or the most often. As the plants start to grow, we start reducing how often we water, but we put more water so that the water is having more of a chance to go deep, because in the beginning stages, the roots are just below the surface and it dries out quickly. So we might water every day, just a little bit. But as the roots start going deeper, we'll start watering every second day, then every third day, then every fourth day. By the time you get into watering every fourth day, you're watering approximately once a week. And that's usually for spring and summer planting. By the time it gets to summer, we're watering just once a week. That's when the sun is the hottest, but also the plants are the biggest and their roots are the deepest. And we want to use the beginning period to build up the underground water so that in the summer season, the peak of summer, there's a lot of shade from the big plants and the roots are going deeper. Then there's mulching. So mulching, I like to do it in the beginning of the season, and then I separate the mulch and I plant the seedlings in. You might find that you're building up mulch through the season. Every time you cut the grass, you let it dry and then you bring it into the garden and you're packing it around. It's really important to do mulching. I consider mulching the single most important task in terms of soil fertility, because you're making compost very slowly right in the garden, because whatever you mulch with over time will decompose and become a carbon layer that gets absorbed into the soil. Okay, and then we do weeding. Yeah, I try to avoid doing weeding all the time. Instead, I do weeding before I plant. Then I plant my seeds, I get my beds ready, and then I let the weeds and the seedlings grow until they're about 2 months, maybe 3 months old, and then I come through and I weed the whole garden, because I want to harvest those weeds. I want to either put them into the compost or I want to put them into a liquid fertilizer, which we call fermented plant juice. We just let the weeds sit in some water. They start to froth, they start smelling, but all their juices go into the water, and in that way we're able to take the juice, transfer it into the water, and we water the plants with that. So those are some of the general tasks we consider. Next up is the structures which need repair and maintenance. So these are things like shaping the beds, digging swales, putting up fences, making small buildings like a nursery, cleaning out the gutters around the house before the rainy season. These jobs we usually plan for the whole year. So we don't always want to be working on fencing. We don't always want to be digging swales. When we do our design, we're going to say, where's these things going to be? And these big structures, I like to do them in winter when I've got the least work, in the garden because things tend to grow slowly. Next, we've got our plant improvers and pest management. So here we're looking at compost making, worm farms, liquid manure, comfrey tea, and our pest management teas. We've left space. You're going to fill this in according to how you want to do it. Yeah. All of these things require a bit of skill and understanding, and mostly they need to be allocated to a particular time. Next up, we've got our nursery tasks, and these are things like planting vegetable seeds in the nursery, making our seedling potting mix. We might also think about things like doing graftings, growing trees, having building a structure. There's a whole lot of things that as you become better as being a gardener, you're going to find there's a lot of work that gets done in the nursery. And it's also really important because if you get your nursery operating really well, it can become a business on its own because you can be supplying seedlings to your community, you can be supplying potting mix, you can be supplying a good quality compost, you can be making your own biochar, you can be making worm tea. There's a whole lot of things that come out of the nursery that we've all been to nurseries where we spend a lot of money just because they've been very clever around looking at how does a nursery become an income stream. Okay, then the next thing is planting tasks. So things come out of the nursery and they go into the garden. And this is where we've got a plan what we're planting directly into the garden and what we're transplanting. So for me, I like to think about these planting tasks as identifying what plants I'm going to be growing at what time. So in 1 month, I'm writing them here under nursery tasks. In the next month, I'm writing them as planting tasks because they've started in the nursery, and then after 6 weeks, they're going to move and become planted into the garden. I'm also going to be able to start guessing at my harvesting tasks. So if I know I'm planting seeds in September, then I know that from December, I'm going to start harvesting. So there's a whole lot of things that we need to think about around harvesting. And then we're going to think about our planning tasks and any special tasks. Special tasks are things like taking people on tours of the garden, any special things that you're doing in your garden that you want to make sure that you plan for so you've got enough time. This page works with the calendar. So this page identifies what must be done. This page allocates a time to do it. So you will see that we haven't put the dates. Instead, we've left it blank. So in your copy, you're only going to get 2 pages, 1. You're going to need to make 12 copies of this page, and we're going to leave this blank so you can fill out your general tasks, and we're going to leave this blank in that you're going to fill out the dates. So you'll see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks, because sometimes the first is in this week and it goes to that week. But the way the calendar is designed is that you do your planning, then you'll turn over and you should have a blank page like this one. And you'll see that I've got my planner here, and then on this blank page is where I'm able to take all my notes. And you'll see that we often have lots and lots of notes, that things that happened during the month. Yeah, and we've got 2 pages that we use for notes. Okay, so these 2 you're going to make 12 copies of, 1 for each month. And so for every month, you're going to be thinking about what's my general tasks, what's my structures that I have to work on, what's my soil improvement jobs, what's my nursery tasks, my planting tasks, my harvesting tasks, my planning and special tasks. When it comes to this page, this is now where all the work is planned. So I'm going to show you what an old one looks like. So here's an old one, and you'll see that we've written in. So we write in the season. This was for October 2023. And so we wrote in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, because Sunday was the 1st, then the Monday was the 2nd, Tuesday was the 3rd. And we fill it in like that so that we can keep using the same one each year. And then what we do is we take the tasks that we've identified on this page and we start to allocate them a very specific, you can start either with identifying a week they must be done in or a specific day. When I fill in the dates, I also like to include the 4 stages of the moon. So the moon goes through 4 stages when she's reflecting the light of the sun. Plants respond to light through photosynthesis. So when they are getting more sunlight at night via the moon, they're going to be encouraged to grow more. And this is how that process works. At night, the moon is out and she's reflecting onto the plants the sun's light. When the moon is beginning to grow, she's going from being completely dark, which is what we call the new moon, and it starts to slowly just be a sliver of light. That's going to take approximately 7 days to get to from new moon to the first quarter. It's during this time that she's helping the plants pull themselves upwards because now the energy is moving up the plants, specifically because the moon has a relationship to water and she pulls water towards herself. And if any of the fishermen are out there, they'll tell you there's certain times when the ocean is stronger and weaker and it's connected to how full the moon is. So in the first phase of the moon is when we want to be planting our seeds and giving them time to germinate. And I try to plant just before the new moon when it's still dark because it takes maybe 2 or 3 days for the seed to break through the soil. The moment it breaks through, it needs to be getting a little bit of help from the moon with added light. So I use the moon as a guide to help me identify when I do things. The first phase of the moon is when I'm planting seeds, and I'm also going to be transplanting at that time. The second phase of the moon, when she's moving from the first quarter towards full moon, this is when the plants are getting the most support from the moon. So I try to work out when do the plants need the most support, and this is the time when I will put things like my fermented plant juice. I will make sure that all the liquid stimulants are being added at this time so the plants can suck them up. Then we go through when the moon starts to wane, and the waning is now getting smaller, and so it's going from the full moon to the last quarter. At this stage, the moon is starting to get smaller and her support is starting to go to the root zones. So this is when we do things like planting potatoes because they're under the ground and they need that root stimulation. And then we get to the last phase of the moon, from the last quarter till the new moon. And this is when it gets very dark at night. And it's really important as gardeners, pay attention to the moon because it's a natural element that's supporting the garden. Yeah? At this time is when I do things like turn the compost, fix the fence, clean the gutters, all the work that doesn't need plants, the plants don't need any support from the moon. The plants can just be left alone. They're in their most delicate time and we just leave them. Okay, so that gives you an idea of how we're going to use these. You're going to print out 12 copies of these. You're going to make one calendar for each month. You're going to write in the dates. You're going to write in the jobs that you're going to allocate in here. This now brings us to the third section of the garden. So here's an example of what your one will look like. I've taken all the details out and you're going to be able to fill that in for yourself in terms of what your garden needs. This is what your calendar will look like. And I've got 2 in mind because I've started already replicating it. Section 3. So this section 3 is really an explanation of how to use the calendar, much like we've done in this video. And it also goes into much more information around the general task, the structures, the soil improvers, and they're numbered 1 to 8. And then we start going into much more detail. This one you don't need to print out and keep with your planner. So this part is the part that you will assemble. And I normally just staple the edges. Once I've made my 12 copies of these pages, once I've got 12 copies of these two, then I staple it all together and I start doing the planning phase. The explanations, this is for our community workers who want to get a little bit more information. I would suggest that if you are going to use this, you don't necessarily need to print out all these pages. You might print one copy just as reference, and you will keep this. You can keep it with your planner, but it does make the planner quite bulky. I like to just keep this in my garden book, and it just gives you some details around cleaning, weeding, mulching, composting, all the things that we've mentioned, just giving you a bit more detail. And this is the beginning of a garden manual, which we're still working on. There are already so many. One of my teachers, Alan Rosenberg, has written an amazing 2 books on agroecology, which gives a lot of information on these things. So this is just a light touch, just so you have some knowledge that you can use. Okay, guys, that was a long video. If you made it to this point, well done. My throat is sore, and I'm sure you're tired of seeing my face and hearing my voice. Get into the garden, start planning, start recording, start allocating specific time to get certain jobs done so that they synchronize with the natural elements so that you can become a better gardener. You're going to make this booklet year after year so that you're recording and you're looking back and seeing, what did I do in my garden? How well did it work? We also encourage you to adjust this booklet so that it works for you. We are in the process of trying to have it translated into isiXhosa, Afrikaans, and more languages so that it can be available to more people. Thank you very much for making it to this point in the video. We really appreciate your work in transforming South Africa's food system. Cheers.